How's it going, guys? This is Soul Singed here, and welcome to my late review for episode 4 of season 7 of Battlebots. I want to apologize for getting this out so late. I've just been pretty busy with some stuff, so it is what it is. Let's just get straight into the fights. First fight of the night was Monsoon versus Black Dragon. Monsoon is a very heavy-hitting vertical spinner from the UK that competed in seasons past. However, it was not able to make it in 2020 and 21 due to the pandemic. And like Death Roll, it seems to be basically the same Monsoon. And they still seem to hit pretty hard. However, they were fighting Black Dragon, who has never been knocked out. In 22 career fights, Black Dragon has never been knocked out. And Black Dragon does what Black Dragon does, which is just enough to win. Early on in the fight, Monsoon was very ahead, had partially disabled Black Dragon's drive, at least it seemed that way, and was ahead on the scorecard in basically every category. Then Black Dragon got one good hit in, which disabled their weapon, and Black Dragon got some other decent hits in and got them flipped over on their side where they could not self-right, and Black Dragon won by knockout. Like I said, Black Dragon did what Black Dragon does, which is just enough to secure a W. And yeah, Black Dragon might have the most predictable fights ever, because basically every fight Black Dragon comes out and does just enough to win. Second fight of the night was Malice versus Emulsifier. Malice, who looked pretty decent in its opening match against Lockjaw, but ultimately lost its weapon and lost the match. Emulsifier, which went 3 minutes with Fusion and had some pretty impressive shots, but a little bit of struggles here. This fight appeared to be all Emulsifier. It was getting some absolutely monstrous hits in on Malice, flipped them over, completely mangled their frame, but they ended up getting high-centered or something, because at one point in the match, they just could not move. And you could see one side of the treads still going, but not making contact with the floor. So I don't know if part of their underbelly got kinked up and high-centered them, or if they got caught on the floor, or what happened. But they couldn't move, and Malice was still driving around, admittedly spinning around in circles, but the rules this year state that any movement will keep a robot in a fight, so Malice got the knockout here. Not the most convincing knockout, but 1-1 is better than 0-2. And Emulsifier, despite looking fairly impressive its first two matches, has fallen to 0-2. Next match of the night was Starchild versus Overhaul. I did not realize this, I guess because I was so caught up in the design of Starchild, but I did not realize that Brandon Zielinski is the man behind this. For those who don't know, Brandon Zielinski was the previous team captain for P1. Last season was the final season for P1 to compete. He was retiring it to come with a new robot, which is kind of a shame because P1 looked really good last year. It made a fairly good tournament run, looked good in the main season. I really wish he would have stuck with P1 a little bit longer, especially because of how well the control bots have been doing this season. But here he is with his new robot, Starchild, that a lot of people have compared to Huge. But Brandon said that the inspiration is a robot from the early Comedy Central days, which was a authentic, real thwack bot. Which, Starchild is not a true thwack bot. It is and isn't. Because, see, a thwack bot is basically designed where you drive... The robot has a long tail at the end, and it's designed for you to drive forward up to your opponent, and then slam on the brakes, which causes the body to flip over, thwacking the opponent with that tail. Now, the current rules for the new Battlebot series doesn't really consider that a real active weapon. Plus, a real thwack bot would not be very effective against today's robots. That's why you mainly only see them in lower level competitions and in lower weight classes. So what Brandon has done is put a hammer saw like vertical spinner at the end of the tail to have an active weapon. But it still acts like a regular Thwackbot. Drive up to your opponent, slam on the brakes, flip the robot over, slam them with the vertical spinner. Which will work and can be very deadly. You have to be very precise. You have to have very precise shots. And Overhaul looked really good. This is probably the best we've seen Overhaul since maybe 2015 when it beat Lockjaw. And yeah, Charles Guan was on point with his driving, showed a lot of control, a lot of aggression, and Starchild got some decent hits in. You can tell that there's going to be some time to get used to this robot to really dial in the driving and whatnot, so looking forward to seeing what both of these teams can do in the future. Overhaul got the W, but I was very impressed by both of these robots. Another next match was Gruff versus Quantum. Gruff being one of the most durable robots in Battlebots, coming off a victory in his debut match against the pizza robot, Ripperoni. And Quantum coming off a very impressive win against Captain Shredderator. And Quantum is horrifying. Not only is Gruff very durable, they came in with several extra defensive measures to try and counteract Quantum's Crusher. Quantum just did not care. They had these bars on the side of the robot to jam up Quantum's tooth, and Quantum just crushed right through it like it was nothing. So, Quantum got the KO here. A Crusher bot, which most people, after Kraken has struggled, gave up on Crushers. And Quantum is looking absolutely phenomenal. They've yet to go against a truly devastating opponent, but if Quantum keeps on the track it's going, it could really go far if it gets the right matchups. Which really begs the question on Kraken, was Kraken just too weak in terms of crushing ability? Because, see, most Crushers are hydraulic. Like, Quantum is hydraulic. Petunia was hydraulic. A lot of your Crushers are hydraulic. Whereas Kraken was a pneumatic Crusher. So maybe the problem isn't Crushers not being effective anymore. Maybe Kraken just didn't have enough crushing power. And speaking of Kraken, our very next match was Beta versus Kraken. The new Kraken is basically a hammer saw robot like Sawblaze and Scorpios. And Beta is big scary hammer robot. And of course it did bring up how the last season that they competed in, which was 2020, Beta barely used their hammer and they caught a lot of flack for that. And Beta used their hammer. They went in with this really thin hammer, which is supposed to be designed as more of a slicing hammer, and it didn't have the devastating hits that we usually see. And Kraken got some good hits in and seemed to be in control of this fight up until about the halfway mark. And seemed to have some driving difficulties, which Matt believes it comes down to just needing to tweak some things, and he believed that the wheels weren't making good traction. And another thing is Matt is going from driving a robot with no spinner, which doesn't generate any sort of centrifugal force, to having a robot with a big spinning weapon that generates force, which affects the driving. That's one of the reasons why Gigabyte had so much driving difficulties in its first match, because it has new drivers who've never driven anything like Gigabyte. And full-body spinners are usually some of the hardest robots to control. And, yeah, what ended up costing the Kraken the match in this fight, I believe, was in one hammer strike from Beta disabled Kraken's weapon. And it mangled Beta's hammer, but it was still firing, and they were still smashing this horribly mangled hammer against Kraken. And it went to a judge's decision, and Beta won. Though Matt did say he was pleased with the performance, and I feel like once he gets everything tweaked and dialed in, Kraken could be a monster. The next match was against two rookie robots, Horizon and Shreddit Bro. The team behind Shreddit Bro being Evan, I forget his last name, and he piloted Pain Train the last 2 seasons. And between Pain Train not being the most durable robot and going up against a lot of nasty opponents, it's only gotten 1 win in its 2 seasons. Most of its matches, it would either get absolutely obliterated or its drum would fall apart for no reason. And in this match, Shreddit Bro seems to have a pretty potent weapon. It got a couple really nice hits in on Horizon. It just had horrible mobility. I don't know if they were having radio control issues. I don't know if they were getting caught on the floor. But Shreddit Bro's mobility was just horrible. Horrible in this match. And the way Horizon is supposed to work, because if you'll zoom in and look at it, it has those 2 horizontal spinners on each end of this arm. Those spinners are supposed to spin up, and the force generated by them makes the entire arm rotate, which in theory would make the hits a lot harder. Now, I've already said this when I was going over the reveal of the field of robots. This robot was originally built in a lower weight class, and it did very well in a lower weight class. However, as we've seen with robots like this, especially when centrifugal and gyroscopic force is involved, doesn't always scale up properly. Prime example being Rex. The ant weight version of Rex was an absolute beast, absolute monster, amazing ant weight. Scaled to 250 pounds, it didn't win a single fight. And Horizon, I feel, is going to go the same route. Because the spinners got up to speed pretty quickly, but after like 20 seconds, the arm was just starting to spin up good, was just starting to actually spin a little bit. So once Horizon goes up against a fairly quick opponent, that arm's never going to get to spinning. So they're just going to have to rely on the 2 spinners themselves, which they do seem to be fairly potent. They got one nice hit in with one of the spinners that kind of knocked Shreddit Bro across the box. It also killed that spinner because it didn't spin at all afterwards, which completely ruins the whole spinning arm thing, because if only one of the spinners is active, the arm can't generate the force to spin itself. So it'll just be interesting to see how they can tweak this to make it potentially work. I don't expect them to do all that great. I'll definitely be interested in seeing them in the future. And Shreddit Bro, if they can get their mobility figured out, they could be quite a competent opponent. And then for our main event, we had Whiplash versus Hypershock. And Whiplash was absolutely dismantled by Mad Catter in its opening fight. Whereas Hypershock lost a judge's decision after the robots got stuck and were unable to be separated. And they didn't suffer that much damage. Apart from having Sawblaze's hammer saw stuck in them, they didn't really suffer that much actual damage. And this match, Hypershock got a couple good shots in. But once Hypershock got some hits in, it was pretty much game over. Because the last couple hits started to really rattle Whiplash loose. And the last shot basically did the exact same thing Matt Catter did. Just tore them in half, tore them apart. So yeah, Hypershock got a very convincing W here. I fear for Whiplash this season. They're down a team member because Whiplash's the team captain, I completely forgot his name just now. I don't see how I did that because I actually know the team captain's name well. But Matty Vasquez, oh my god, why did I forget that? Matty Vasquez, his brother, who piloted his own robot last season, Defender, I believe, or was it Retrograde? No, Retrograde was Bloodsport's team. So it was Defender, yeah. His brother ran Defender, but was still helping out the Whiplash team. However, he was not able to make filming this season due to being in school. So they're down a team member, and they suffered a lot of damage in their first fight and suffered a lot of damage here. So I feel like Whiplash is going to really struggle this season. They might not even make the top 32 if they continue down this path. So definitely a scary situation for Whiplash. And Hypershock bounced right back. So yeah, everything is still out in the open. I'm still doing fairly bad with these predictions. I only got, let's see, 1, 2, 3. 3 out of the 7 fights correct. I have yet to have a positive ratio on getting these predictions correct. So, yeah, a lot of things are open. Definitely gonna really be a tough to figure out what's gonna happen. Because like I said, you're seeing control robots doing a lot better this year. Robots that used to be good doing not so great. So definitely a very interesting season and very competitive season. Because I feel like as of right now, I would say 40 to 45 of the 50 robots are giant nut contenders. And I'm not joking. Like, the field this year is that good. So, yeah, that just about wraps up this review. I will see you guys in the review for the next episode, or whatever my next video is. Peace!